How did Vikings endure the relentless cold of the north, where frostbite could claim fingers, toes, and even lives within minutes, yet still venture out to sea, hunt, or raid? The answer lies in a combination of environmental ingenuity, resourceful use of natural materials, and centuries of trial and error adaptation. Vikings did not have modern insulated clothing, synthetic fibers, or advanced heating systems. Instead, they relied on what the land and sea provided: wool, hides, and oils used in precise combinations and layered thoughtfully to create a protective armor against frost, wind, and icy precipitation. Their survival was not luck. It was a system, a carefully orchestrated interaction between human physiology, materials, and experience. Wool, harvested from sheep, was the cornerstone of thermal protection. Unlike linen or other plant-based fibers, wool has natural crimp and air pockets that trap heat, providing insulation even when damp. Vikings understood that layering wool could dramatically increase warmth, with inner layers absorbing moisture from the body and outer layers providing thick insulation. Wool could be spun into various thicknesses, felted for extra density, or woven into garments with variable textures to target specific areas of the body. This flexibility allowed clothing to be tailored for different activities, from sedentary tasks near the hearth to strenuous labor or travel in blizzards. Animal oils and fats complemented wool's insulating properties. Fatty substances derived from seals, fish, and terrestrial animals were applied to outer layers to increase water resistance. A wool tunic coated with oil could repel sleet, snow, and rain, preventing garments from becoming saturated, a condition that would otherwise accelerate heat loss and increase the risk of hypothermia. In addition to protecting against moisture, oils maintained the suppleness of hides and furs, ensuring that footwear, gloves, and cloaks remained functional and durable over long winters. This combination of wool and oil created a semi-impermeable shell that maintained warmth even under severe Arctic conditions. Layering was a crucial principle in Viking winter survival. Vikings typically wore multiple layers of wool, fur, or a combination, each serving a specific function. The base layer, close to the skin, absorbed sweat and moisture. Middle layers provided insulation, trapping heat generated by the body. Outer layers, often treated with oil or fat, shielded against wind, precipitation, and abrasions. By adjusting layers according to activity level and weather conditions, Vikings could maintain a stable core temperature without excessive sweating or chilling. This dynamic layering system illustrates a sophisticated understanding of thermoregulation long before modern science formalized the concept. Protecting extremities was of particular importance. Fingers, toes, noses, and ears are the first to succumb to frostbite, yet they are essential for survival in harsh conditions. Mittens, gloves, boots, and hats were carefully constructed and layered to provide maximum insulation. Furs were often used inside mittens and boots to trap air and heat, while oils helped prevent moisture from penetrating. Footwear might consist of multiple layers of hide or leather, insulated with wool or fur, and treated with fat to maintain flexibility and repel snow. Hats and hoods lined with fur insulated the head, while scarves or wraps protected the neck and face, preventing heat loss from areas most vulnerable to cold exposure. Vikings were also meticulous about maintenance. Wool garments were dried and aired to prevent moisture accumulation, which could rapidly undermine insulation. Oil treatments were reapplied as needed, and repairs were performed promptly to maintain garment integrity. Footwear, particularly boots exposed to snow and ice, required constant attention to ensure they remained flexible, water-resistant, and insulating. The effectiveness of Viking clothing was thus as much about ongoing care as it was about initial construction. Without proper maintenance, even the best materials could fail under Arctic conditions. Clothing alone was not sufficient. Vikings also understood the importance of activity in generating and maintaining body heat. Physical labor, such as rowing, chopping wood, or hunting, produced warmth that was retained more effectively by layered clothing. Conversely, during periods of rest, additional layers could be added to prevent chilling. Knowledge of the relationship between exertion, sweat, and insulation was embedded in daily practice, reflecting a holistic approach to survival that integrated clothing, behavior, and environmental awareness. Footwear played a critical role in preventing frostbite and maintaining mobility. Snow and ice could penetrate poorly constructed boots, leading to rapid cooling of the feet. Vikings used multiple layers, often with fur or wool. lining and treated leather with oils or fats to maintain both insulation and water resistance. Boots were shaped to allow for circulation and avoid constriction, understanding that tight footwear increases the risk of frostbite. The combination of material selection, layering, and careful maintenance enabled Vikings to traverse icy terrain, hunt, and travel long distances without debilitating cold injuries. The integration of wool and oil extended beyond clothing to tools and equipment. Rope, sailcloth, and other fabrics were treated to withstand moisture and freezing temperatures. Wool padding was used in gloves for handling ropes, in saddles for long-distance travel on horseback, and in bedding to provide insulation during rest. This systemic approach demonstrates that Vikings thought of materials as part of an interconnected survival strategy, where every element of clothing, equipment, and personal care contributed to enduring the cold. Fur played a complementary role, often combined with wool and oil for maximum protection. While wool provided breathable insulation and oil created water resistance, fur added extreme warmth in localized areas. Fur-lined boots, mittens, and hoods could prevent frostbite even in temperatures well below freezing. Thicker furs were used for outer layers during intense exposure, while softer, lighter furs provided comfort and flexibility for indoor activities. The combination of materials was not arbitrary. It was calibrated for specific purposes, reflecting careful empirical knowledge of thermal properties and environmental demands. Vikings also leveraged design and tailoring to enhance warmth. Garments were cut and shaped to trap heat effectively, with cuffs, collars, and hems designed to minimize drafts. Tunics and cloaks were tailored to allow movement while maintaining coverage, preventing heat loss from gaps or openings. Hoods and hats often featured fur trim around the face to reduce exposure to wind, while mittens could be layered with inner gloves for dexterity without sacrificing warmth. These design choices show a sophisticated understanding of human anatomy, movement, and thermal dynamics. Food and nutrition supported the effectiveness of clothing. Adequate calories and fat intake helped generate body heat, while warm liquids maintained core temperature. Vikings understood that clothing alone could not prevent cold injury if the body lacked sufficient energy. Thus, survival strategies integrated diet, activity, and protective materials into a coordinated system. Meals and hot drinks were timed to complement periods of activity and rest, ensuring that body heat was maintained throughout the day and night. Cultural knowledge reinforced these practices. Young Vikings learned from elders how to layer wool effectively, maintain oil-treated garments, and care for fur-lined items. They were taught to recognize early signs of frostbite, how to protect vulnerable extremities, and how to adjust. Clothing during activity. This transmission of practical knowledge ensured continuity of survival skills across generations, creating a resilient culture capable of enduring Arctic winters. Even the most routine clothing practices reflected adaptation to environmental extremes. Inner layers were worn close to the skin to absorb sweat, middle layers provided bulk insulation, outer layers protected against wind and moisture. Gloves and mittens were layered strategically, boots insulated with multiple materials, and cloaks or capes shielded the body from snow and rain. By thinking of clothing as a system rather than individual pieces, Vikings could respond dynamically to environmental challenges and maintain comfort and safety during long journeys or extended winter exposure. Vikings also understood the importance of ventilation and moisture management within clothing systems. While wool retains heat even when damp, excessive moisture from sweat could reduce insulation and increase chilling risk. Clothing was adjusted according to activity level, with outer layers removed or loosened during exertion and replaced or tightened during rest. Garments were aired and dried regularly to maintain performance, highlighting the continuous interaction between human behavior and clothing function. In addition to individual survival, wool and oil supported group activities. On long ships or during expeditions, shared knowledge about clothing, layering, and protective measures ensured that all members of a crew or hunting party could endure extreme cold. Resources such as oil or spare wool garments were stored strategically to address emergencies or prolonged exposure, reflecting communal planning and foresight. These practices illustrate that survival was not just personal, it was a coordinated effort supported by shared knowledge, materials, and preparation. By combining wool, fur, oil, and careful layering, Vikings created a clothing system that functioned as both armor and insulation. Each element, materials, design, maintenance, and behavior, was interdependent, forming a dynamic system capable of responding to harsh Arctic conditions. Generations of observation, trial, and adaptation refined these strategies, allowing Vikings to explore, raid, hunt, and trade in environments that would have been lethal without such preparation. The legacy of Viking clothing practices demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of material properties, human physiology, and environmental adaptation. It highlights the interplay between natural resources, technical skill, and cultural knowledge, showing how communities could survive and thrive in some of the coldest inhabited regions on Earth. Wool and oil were more than materials. They were survival technologies embedded in daily life and passed down as essential knowledge for enduring extreme winters. Through careful layering, strategic use of oils, and continuous maintenance, Vikings achieved a remarkable level of protection against frostbite and hypothermia. Extremities were insulated, moisture was managed, and core warmth was preserved even during prolonged exposure to icy winds, snow, and sleet. Clothing was integrated with activity, diet, and social practice to create a complete survival system, allowing humans to function effectively in conditions that might otherwise have been deadly. By combining natural fibers, animal fats, and empirical knowledge, Vikings turned the simplest of materials into highly effective survival tools. Wool trapped heat and allowed breathability, fur added targeted insulation, and oil created water resistance while preserving flexibility. Layered together, these materials formed a protective system that enabled exploration, labor, and survival in Arctic conditions. Every garment, every treatment, and every design choice was informed by generations of experience, observation, and adaptation, demonstrating the depth of Viking environmental intelligence. Even when facing extreme conditions such as prolonged storms, blizzards, or sea voyages, Vikings relied on these strategies to maintain warmth and mobility. Clothing systems were adjusted dynamically according to activity, weather, and duration of exposure. Base layers absorbed moisture, middle layers trapped heat, and outer layers shielded against wind and precipitation. Extremities were protected with layered mittens, boots, and fur-lined hoods, preventing frostbite even during extended exposure. This comprehensive approach allowed Vikings to endure winters and journeys that would challenge any human population without modern technology. By integrating clothing, oils, and knowledge of layering and maintenance, Vikings developed a resilient system for surviving frostbite-level cold. These strategies were embedded in daily life, cultural practice, and community organization, ensuring continuity across generations. Wool and oil were not simply materials, they were life-sustaining technologies optimized for thermal efficiency, moisture management, and long-term durability. Through this combination of resources, skill, and cultural knowledge, Vikings achieved survival in extreme northern environments, creating a legacy of ingenuity and resilience that continues to fascinate and inspire today. The Viking approach to surviving frostbite-level cold extended beyond clothing to a holistic understanding of the relationship between body, environment, and materials. Every aspect of daily life was coordinated to preserve warmth, manage moisture, and maintain health in extreme cold. Clothing, while essential, was integrated with physical activity, shelter, nutrition, and community practices to form a comprehensive system for enduring Arctic conditions. The success of this system relied on observation, adaptation, and the cumulative knowledge passed down through generations. Physical activity played a critical role in maintaining body heat. Vikings understood that movement generated warmth, while stillness could quickly lead to chilling. Labor-intensive tasks, such as rowing longships, hunting, chopping wood, or traveling across snow-covered terrain, produced heat that was retained by their layered clothing. When resting, Vikings added extra layers or moved closer to heat sources, ensuring that the core temperature remained stable. This dynamic management of activity and clothing demonstrates a sophisticated grasp of human thermoregulation. Clothing was never static. It was adjusted according to exertion, weather conditions, and exposure, creating a flexible system that allowed survival in harsh, changing environments. In addition to clothing and activity, diet played a crucial role in cold survival. High-calorie foods, rich in fat and protein, fueled the body to generate internal heat. Meals were often timed to complement physical activity, a hearty breakfast before exertion, warm food during the day, and nutrient-dense fare at night to sustain warmth while sleeping. Vikings also used warm liquids such as broths or herbal teas to maintain core temperature and hydration. Food and clothing were interdependent components of the survival system. Without adequate nutrition, even the best wool and oil garments could not prevent hypothermia. protecting extremities remained a priority because frostbite could quickly incapacitate a person, jeopardizing survival in remote or exposed locations. Multi-layered mittens and gloves, often lined with wool or fur and treated with animal fat, preserved dexterity while preventing heat loss. Footwear combined leather, wool, and fur, insulated with air pockets to trap warmth, and treated with oils to repel water and maintain flexibility. Hats, hoods, and scarves shielded the head, face, and neck where significant heat loss occurs. Layering was strategic. Thinner, moisture-absorbing inner layers, insulating middle layers, and weather-resistant outer layers created a system that protected the entire body while allowing mobility and function. Vikings also innovated with materials to optimize performance. Wool could be felted or woven densely to increase thermal retention, while hides and furs added localized insulation in areas exposed to wind and cold. Oils were applied not only to outer garments, but also to gloves, boots, and even ropes or sailcloth used during voyages. This treated materials to repel moisture and maintain flexibility under freezing conditions. The interplay of wool, fur, and oil created a resilient protective system capable of sustaining warmth even during snowstorms, icy winds, or prolonged exposure on open seas. Knowledge of layering extended to the design of individual garments. Tunics, cloaks, and trousers were cut to maximize coverage while allowing freedom of movement. Seams were placed strategically to prevent cold drafts, and hems were adjusted to avoid heat loss from gaps. Cloaks often featured hoods with fur trim to shield the face from wind, and mittens were shaped to allow for dexterity while trapping heat effectively. These design choices were informed by observation and experience, reflecting a deep empirical understanding of human anatomy and environmental physics. Vikings' survival strategies also included communal knowledge and coordination. Longships, or during hunting parties, shared understanding of clothing systems, layering techniques, and oil application ensured that every member could endure extreme cold. Spare garments, furs, and treated hides were stored for emergencies, while experienced members guided younger or less skilled individuals in proper layering, maintenance, and care. This communal approach amplified individual survival, creating a network of support and resource sharing that was crucial for enduring prolonged exposure to Arctic conditions. Maintenance was continuous. Wool garments were regularly aired and dried to prevent moisture accumulation, which could drastically reduce insulation. Oils were reapplied to outer layers to maintain water resistance, and furs were brushed or adjusted to preserve their insulating properties. Boots, gloves, and hats received similar care to ensure they remained flexible and functional. This constant attention to detail allowed clothing systems to perform reliably throughout long winters, demonstrating that Viking survival relied as much on upkeep as on construction. Vikings also understood the importance of shelter in conjunction with clothing. While wool, fur, and oil provided individual protection, homes, longhouses, and temporary shelters offered controlled environments where heat could be preserved and snow or wind avoided. Fires were positioned to radiate warmth efficiently, while smoke ventilation prevented respiratory hazards. Sleeping platforms, raised-off cold floors, and bedding materials like furs and grasses created insulated microclimates, allowing body heat to be retained. The combination of clothing and shelter created a layered survival strategy with the human body at the center of an interconnected system of warmth, insulation, and protection. The design of Viking clothing was dynamic and adaptable. Multiple layers could be added or removed depending on activity, weather, or exposure. For example, a wool-based layer could absorb sweat during heavy labor, while outer layers of oiled wool or fur provided protection against wind and precipitation. Gloves and mittens could be layered for increased insulation, boots adjusted with additional furs, and hoods or scarves used to shield the head and neck. This flexibility allowed Vikings to respond to immediate environmental challenges without compromising mobility or functionality. Clothing also functioned as a tool for risk management. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exposure injuries could be prevented through strategic layering, material choice, and protective design. Vikings monitored each other for early signs of cold-related injury, adjusting clothing or activity to prevent further harm. This attention to detail and communal vigilance enhanced survival, creating a culture of care and preparedness in addition to technical expertise. The effectiveness of wool and oil extended to long voyages, on open seas where wind, spray, and freezing temperatures combined. To create extreme conditions, layered clothing treated with oil provided a critical barrier against heat loss. Wool absorbed sweat while retaining warmth, oil prevented moisture penetration, and furs added additional insulation. These materials allowed Vikings to row, navigate, and manage ships for extended periods without succumbing to cold injury, enabling their remarkable seafaring expansion across the North Atlantic. Footwear was particularly critical for mobility and safety. Multi-layered boots insulated with wool or fur and treated with oil protected feet from freezing surfaces, snow, and ice. Soles were designed to retain flexibility while preventing heat loss, and boots were shaped to avoid constriction, which can reduce circulation and increase frostbite risk. Proper maintenance ensured that boots remained functional over long periods, preventing injury and maintaining mobility in treacherous conditions. Vikings also adapted clothing for rest and sleep. During the night, additional layers of wool, furs, or oiled garments were applied to preserve warmth. Sleeping platforms and mats created insulation from cold floors, and bedding materials were adjusted to trap body heat. Even while stationary, the integration of clothing, bedding, and shelter maintained core temperature, preventing hypothermia during prolonged periods of inactivity. The cumulative effect of these practices, layering, material treatment, maintenance, and activity management, was a clothing system optimized for survival in frostbite-level cold. Each element supported the others. Wool trapped heat, oil repelled moisture, furs added localized warmth, and proper layering prevented energy loss. Activity, diet, and shelter further reinforced thermal regulation, creating a resilient, adaptive system that allowed Vikings to endure extreme winters. Cultural knowledge ensured that these strategies persisted across generations. Elders taught younger members how to construct garments, apply oils, layer effectively, and monitor for signs of cold injury. Techniques were refined through observation and experience, creating a body of practical knowledge that informed every aspect of winter survival. This transmission of expertise ensured continuity and resilience, allowing entire communities to thrive in environments that would have been deadly without such adaptations. Even in periods of prolonged storms or extreme exposure, Vikings' layered clothing systems, treated with oils and reinforced with furs, enabled survival. Extremities were protected, moisture was managed, and core warmth was maintained. Clothing was coordinated with physical activity, diet, and shelter to create a comprehensive survival strategy. The result was not just endurance but functionality. Vikings could navigate, hunt, and perform essential tasks even under the harshest conditions. By combining empirical knowledge of materials, human physiology, and environmental forces, Vikings developed clothing that functioned as a life-sustaining technology. Wool provided insulation and moisture absorption, oil added water resistance and flexibility, and furs supplied targeted warmth. Layering, design, and maintenance ensured optimal performance, allowing Vikings to survive and thrive in climates that would challenge modern humans without advanced equipment. Viking clothing practices exemplify the integration of observation, innovation, and culture. Clothing was not merely a protective layer. It was a system designed to interface with human activity, environmental conditions, and social knowledge. Every tunic, cloak, boot, and glove was part of a broader survival strategy, refined over generations and maintained through communal practice. Wool and oil were at the center of this system, transforming natural materials into highly effective protection against Arctic cold. Through this combination of materials, design, and cultural knowledge, Vikings achieved remarkable resilience in frostbite-level cold. The principles of layering, insulation, moisture management, and extremity protection allowed them to function in extreme conditions, whether at sea, on land, or during long winter expeditions. Survival was the product of a dynamic system integrating clothing, activity, shelter, and knowledge, a testament to human ingenuity and adaptation in the harshest northern climates. Vikings' mastery of cold weather survival extended beyond clothing into a deeper understanding of environmental adaptation, human physiology, and the careful orchestration of materials and behavior. By the final stage of winter preparation or exposure, survival was not simply about putting on wool and oil-treated garments. It involved managing energy, protecting extremities, maintaining core warmth, and integrating social and cultural practices that ensured resilience for individuals and communities alike. Every garment, tool, and routine reflected a system of knowledge honed over generations, designed to maximize endurance in frostbite-level conditions. One of the most critical factors in maintaining warmth was the combination of movement and layered clothing. Vikings understood that the body produces heat through exertion, and they tailored their activities to maintain thermal balance. Rowing longships, chopping firewood, and hunting created heat that was retained by the insulating properties of wool, fur, and oil-treated garments. During rest periods, additional layers could be added to conserve heat, and positioning near fires or within shelters minimized exposure to cold drafts. The dynamic interplay of activity and clothing management illustrates a sophisticated understanding of human thermoregulation, long before it was formally studied in scientific terms. Nutrition played an equally essential role in supporting these strategies. High-calorie diets rich in fat and protein supplied the energy needed for heat production and muscle function in extreme cold. Meals were often structured around activity cycles, with warm broths and stews consumed before or after strenuous labor to sustain core temperature. Salted or smoked meats provided long-lasting fuel for energy, while animal fats used in cooking complemented dietary fat intake to maintain warmth. This integration of nutrition with clothing and activity created a holistic survival system, ensuring that the human body could generate and retain heat even during extended exposure. Extremity protection remained a constant concern, as fingers, toes, ears, and noses are particularly vulnerable to frostbite. Layered mittens, gloves, and boots lined with fur or wool and treated with animal oils provided critical insulation. These garments were designed to balance warmth with dexterity and mobility, enabling Vikings to perform necessary tasks without risking cold injuries. Hats, hoods, and scarves shielded the head and neck, preventing significant heat loss from areas with high blood flow. The careful calibration of protective layers demonstrates a sophisticated empirical understanding of thermal dynamics and human physiology, refined through observation and experience over centuries. Footwear, in particular, showcased the Vikings' ingenuity in balancing insulation, flexibility, and water resistance. Multi-layered boots lined with wool or fur trapped warm air close to the skin, while leather treated with oil prevented water infiltration and maintained flexibility. Soles were shaped to allow natural movement, reducing circulation problems that could exacerbate frostbite risk. Boots were regularly maintained, cleaned, and re-oiled to ensure continued effectiveness, illustrating that survival relied as much on ongoing care as on initial design. Proper footwear enabled long journeys across icy landscapes, allowing Vikings to hunt, travel, and engage in trade or raiding even in deep winter. The application of oils and fats was not limited to clothing. Vikings treated ropes, sailcloth, and other equipment to ensure flexibility and water resistance, creating a broader system in which every material in contact with the body or environment contributed to survival. Wool, fur, and oil were combined strategically. Wool provided breathable insulation, fur supplied localized warmth, and oils created a semi-impermeable layer that protected against moisture. This multi-material system allowed humans to function effectively in severe cold, demonstrating a holistic approach to survival that integrated materials, design, and behavior. Design considerations in clothing were highly functional. Tunics, cloaks, and trousers were cut to maximize coverage while allowing freedom of movement. Seams and hems were positioned to minimize drafts, and hoods often featured fur trim to protect the face from wind and snow. Mittens and gloves were shaped to balance warmth and dexterity, and layering techniques allowed garments to be adjusted according to activity and environmental conditions. Every design choice reflected careful empirical observation, combining anatomical knowledge with experience to create garments optimized for extreme conditions. Vikings also leveraged communal knowledge and social structures to enhance survival. On longships or during hunting expeditions, experienced individuals guided younger or less experienced members in clothing, maintenance, layering, and oil application. Spare garments, furs, and treated hides were distributed strategically for emergencies or prolonged exposure. This communal approach ensured that even during extreme conditions, the group as a whole could maintain warmth, mobility, and functionality. Survival was thus not merely individual, it was a collective endeavor supported by shared knowledge and resource management. Maintenance routines were continuous and essential. Wool garments were aired to prevent moisture accumulation, oils were reapplied to preserve water resistance, and furs were brushed or replaced to maintain insulation. Boots, gloves, and hats received similar attention to ensure functional integrity. Without diligent care, even the most carefully designed clothing systems could fail under extreme cold. highlighting the importance of routine upkeep in the Viking survival strategy. These practices reflect an intimate daily engagement with materials and their performance. In harsh environments, shelter complemented clothing in the overall survival system. Vikings built homes, longhouses, and temporary shelters designed to conserve heat and protect against wind and snow. Fires were positioned to radiate warmth effectively, while ventilation systems removed smoke without compromising indoor temperature. Sleeping platforms, elevated above floors, combined with furs and grasses for insulation, created microclimates that allowed people to rest without losing core heat. The interplay of clothing and shelter formed a dual-layered defense against cold, in which each element reinforced the other to maximize survival. The dynamic nature of Viking clothing allowed for rapid adaptation to changing environmental conditions. Layers could be added or removed according to activity, exposure, or storm intensity. Gloves and mittens could be layered for additional warmth, boots adjusted with extra furs, and hoods or scarves used to shield the face from wind and snow. This flexibility enabled Vikings to respond effectively to immediate challenges while maintaining the functionality required for labor, travel, or defense. Clothing was not static. It was a responsive, adaptive system integrated with environmental awareness. Cultural knowledge ensured that survival strategies were transmitted across generations. Elders taught younger members how to construct garments, apply oils, layer effectively, and monitor for early signs of frostbite. Techniques were refined and adapted over time, creating a repository of practical wisdom that guided daily life and ensured resilience across communities. This continuity allowed Vikings to thrive in climates that would have been lethal without such knowledge, demonstrating the role of culture as a survival tool. Even during extended exposure to storms or sea voyages, Vikings relied on the integrated system of wool, fur, and oil to maintain warmth and mobility. Extremities were protected, core temperature was preserved, and moisture was managed to prevent heat loss. Clothing was coordinated with activity, diet, and shelter, creating a comprehensive system that enabled function in severe conditions. The result was not only survival but the ability to navigate, hunt, and maintain productivity even under extreme environmental stress. Vikings' layered clothing system was fundamentally a form of technology. Wool provided insulation and moisture absorption, oil created water resistance and flexibility, and fur offered localized warmth. Each layer, garment, and treatment was part of a system designed to optimize thermal efficiency and survival. The empirical knowledge embedded in these practices demonstrates the Vikings' deep understanding of materials, human physiology, and environmental adaptation. Clothing was not merely protective, it was a life-sustaining technology, honed over generations through observation, experimentation, and cultural continuity. Maintenance and care reinforced the reliability of this system. Garments were dried, aired, and re-oiled regularly, ensuring consistent performance. Boots and gloves were maintained to prevent cold-related injury, and furs were kept supple and insulating. This ongoing attention to detail illustrates that survival in frostbite-level cold depended as much on routine and discipline as on the raw materials themselves. The Vikings' approach combined knowledge, skill, and labor into a coordinated system capable of sustaining life in extreme conditions. The integration of clothing, nutrition, shelter, and activity created a comprehensive strategy for survival. Layered wool, oiled outer garments, and fur insulation were complemented by high-calorie diets, activity management, and shelter design. Extremities were protected, moisture was controlled, and core warmth was maintained even during prolonged exposure to freezing winds, snow, and ice. This holistic approach allowed Vikings to function in conditions that would have been fatal without such preparation, illustrating the depth and sophistication of their adaptation to the Arctic environment. Vikings' clothing systems also served as risk management tools. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exposure injuries were mitigated through strategic layering, material treatment, and attentive maintenance. Clothing was adjusted in response to changing conditions, and communal knowledge ensured that all members of a group were protected. The systematic approach to cold weather survival highlights the interplay of observation, culture, and technology, creating a resilient framework that extended human capability in extreme climates. The combination of wool, oil, and fur was further enhanced by design details that maximized thermal efficiency. Seams, hems, and closures were strategically placed to prevent drafts. Hoods and cloaks shielded vulnerable areas, and mittens or gloves were shaped to balance warmth and dexterity. Garments were layered in a manner that maintained body heat while allowing mobility, creating a dynamic system that could be adjusted to suit activity, exposure, and environmental conditions. Every element was deliberate, reflecting empirical knowledge passed through generations. The success of these clothing strategies is evident in the Vikings' ability to conduct extended seafaring expeditions, travel across frozen landscapes, and maintain functional communities in Arctic regions. Layering, material treatment, maintenance, and cultural knowledge combined to form a survival system that was both adaptive and resilient. Wool, oil, and fur were not merely garments, they were life-sustaining technologies embedded within a broader framework of environmental awareness, nutrition, and community practice. Through centuries of trial and observation, Vikings developed clothing systems capable of preventing frostbite, maintaining core warmth, and allowing human activity in extreme cold. Layering, material selection, and maintenance created a dynamic, responsive system, while cultural transmission ensured continuity and refinement across generations. Clothing, in combination with shelter, nutrition, and activity, formed a comprehensive survival strategy that enabled Vikings to endure some of the harshest climates on Earth. In the end, the Viking mastery of wool and oil was more than a practical adaptation. It was an integrated survival technology. Clothing functioned as armor against frost, a regulator of thermal balance, and a facilitator of mobility and productivity. By combining empirical knowledge, material science, and cultural practice, Vikings created a system that allowed them not just to survive, but to thrive in frostbite-level cold. Their ingenuity demonstrates that human resilience is not merely a matter of endurance, but the result of observation, experimentation, and thoughtful application of available resources to create a sustainable, adaptive, and life-preserving solution. The legacy of Viking clothing continues to inspire an understanding of human adaptation to extreme environments. Wool, oil, and fur, used in combination with layered systems and cultural knowledge, enabled survival in conditions that challenge even modern humans. The Vikings' approach exemplifies a sophisticated integration of materials, design, and behavior, proving that even without modern technology, people can develop highly effective strategies for enduring the coldest and harshest environments on Earth.